And here we are. And I got to tell you, it is Live Talk with Becky Chernek. And I've got a great featured guest speaker with us tonight, Brian Jordan from the Germain Motor Company. But before we go ahead and get into our terrific conversation today at 5 p.m., which is actually a bit earlier than what I do normally, right, on Wednesday. But we had to make sure we got Brian Jordan at the Academy at Germain Motor Company. And boy, do we ever. And look at him. He looks terrific. Yay. So for those viewers that are new to this channel, I'm Becky Chernek, and I've been providing finance and insurance training for a very long time. Well, over 25 years, I guess 20 years when I founded my company, Chernek Consulting. So it has evolved over the years. It's not just all about F&I. It is from the time that customer touches down on that dealership website to working with BDC, to working with BDC, to working with the sales associate, from sales associate to working with the desk, because we all know that desk is the hub of everything that goes on in a dealership. And we'll have Brian talk about that as well. And then there to finalizing the transaction in the F&I office with a finance manager, or even today, a single point sales associate. So listen up. We are going live on YouTube. So if you like what we're talking about, do a couple things. First of all, if you would hit that subscribe button, we would appreciate it. And also like and share. We're also going live on two of my most favorite groups on Facebook, and that is F&I Today with Becky Chernek, as well as F&I on the Edge. And guys, I got to tell you, if you're not in those two groups, you need to be in those two groups because they're fantastic. And they have phenomenal people, talented folks in the industry that will help you along the way. And then we're going live on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So here we are, Brian. What a mouthful that was. But I want to thank you again for being on with me this afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m., I think, California time. But let's talk about Brian. Let's talk about your automotive retail background and how in the world you got into being the director, if you will, of the training academy for Germain Motor Company.
Well, I started selling cars in 1983 for Mike Dever and Auto Manage at Toyota Northeast. And I only worked at a few places after that before I was introduced to the Germains in 1995. But I worked for a guy named Dick Roby at Roby Chevy Olds in Marysville, Ohio. And then I went to work for Tom Gill Olds-GMC truck. And, I learned a lot from Tom, and we were one of the first dealerships in the country to start a business development center through Tom Stuker and Tom and Joni Stuker. And we really developed that out of a desire to move and transition people more onto the phones. And we knew Tom was really good visionary from that standpoint. He could see how the business was shifting, and it's really funny because, well, I guess it's not funny, but now it's funny. At the time, it wasn't too funny, but when we started the business development center, we took everyone off of the sales floor, and we took them upstairs, and we put them in this big office, and we cleared it out, and we put desks around the side, and we told all these salespeople that had taken ups for, they were dinosaurs really. They had only lived their life on the sales floor, and we told these guys, hey, listen, you cannot talk to a walk-in customer unless you have generated an appointment on the phone. And we literally, within the first week, we had half the sales staff quit. And Tom's like, geez, Brian, I don't know if that's a really good idea or not. And I'm like, well, let's stick with it. And we did, and it worked out. And from there, in 1995, I started with the Germains as a used car manager We had a single point Lexus dealership. We were the first Lexus dealership to break ground in the country, and we were the second to open. And that store came out of a lot of vision on Steve Germain's part. Lexus had come to Steve because we were a Toyota dealership here in Columbus, and Toyota took the dealer in that area with the highest CSI because CSI was extremely important to Lexus. And the Germains were at the top when it comes to CSI. And basically, they come in and they offer the franchise to Steve. And Steve, the story goes, went to his dad, Bob Germain. And he said, "Hey, Dad, we have this opportunity to start a brand new franchise called Lexus." And it was really, it was multiple millions of dollars. I won't tell you how much, but it was several $1 million.
Yeah.
And Bob Germain asked Steve, he said, "Well, how much is it?" And he told him, and he goes, "Are you crazy?" He goes, "You're going to spend that much money on a Lexus franchise, and you don't even know if it's going to make it or not." And Steve's like, "Dad, I'm telling you, it's going to work." And fortunately for the Germains, his dad said, "Okay." And, the rest is history. But that store also taught me a lot. And what it taught me was the value of appreciating the employees and the value of appreciating the customer. And what come out of that was every person in the dealership, from the porter, the person that washed the cars, to the owner, went to all the same training events. And I realized at that time, and I had always known that, customer satisfaction was important, even though there was not much weight put on it in any store that I'd ever worked at. I understood the value of it. And as we would go through this training with Lexus, it really dawned on me that it also was really good for the people that worked there. I learned so much, and I'd learned things that I'd never learned before, and I'd watched other people grow and learn, and that really resonated with me. And I think from that point on, I always had a passion for teaching people. And so I worked there for about 10 years, and then 2001, we opened up our Lexus of Easton store, which is an outdoor mall. Les Wexner, who owns the Limited, it was his design and his build, and he opened up the Easton Mall, and it's an outdoor shopping mall, and it's really an awesome place. And the dealership literally sat inside of this shopping mall area, if you will. And our service department was 2 miles away, so it was just the new and used car buildings, and we had the write-up area there. And John Malashenko, our current COO, was the general manager at the dealership. And I actually, believe it or not, was the salesperson. I had went from being the used car manager through those 10 years, and I went back into selling because my wife says, "Hey, listen, I'm tired of raising the kids. I'm tired of being the mom and the dad." And she goes, "You need to do something." So I went to the Germains and I said, "Hey, listen, if I can work my own schedule, would you allow me, I won't take any floor ups, and I won't take any phone ups, and internet leads had just started about that time. It was like 98, 99.
Okay.
And I said, "Sure, absolutely." He asked me, he goes, "Do you think you can do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I can." And so they allowed me to work my own schedule. And I only worked my opportunities that I had a book of business that I brought with me. And so for the next 4.5 years, I averaged about 19 cars a month, just working my own leads. And it got to a point where they come to me like 3 different times, and they said, "Hey, would you be willing to go over to Easton and be the new car manager?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I don't think so. I really like what I'm doing. I come and go as I please. I don't work weekends if I don't want to." And I got to a point where I told my wife, I said, hey, listen, if they ask me one more time, I'm going to have to take it, because if I don't, I just might as well forego any future promotions. And, once my kids get out of high school and enter into college, I probably won't need to go to all their sporting events and all that type of stuff. And so they finally come to me one more time, and they're like, hey, we'd really like you to go over. And I accepted the job as a new car manager at the Easton store. And from there, I worked there until 2008. And then John Malashenko became the director of operations for Germain Motor Company. And he moved as the general manager and moved to corporate, and started to work for Steve as basically the chief operating officer. And then I became the general manager at the Lexus of Easton store. And I
didn't take you too long to get that, did it?
No, it took me about 3 years. And,
Okay.
and I think, I think it was pretty easy for them to decide. I always tell people, if you want to be a manager, you have to do and say the things a manager does, even if you're not the manager, right? Your daily disciplines and all the things that you do, don't go unnoticed, and people see that. And right, it's next man up, and that's kind of how it worked out for me. I had always run the sales meetings, and I was always involved in service issues. I'd never shied away from problems. Problems are just opportunities in disguise, and so I always would go toward a problem. I'd never run away from a problem, and I think that probably helped them in their decision. And I had I had already had at that point, a 10, 13-year history with Lexus. And and I did that job until 2016. And
well, you have had a tremendous, extensive background in
yeah.
retail. And so the thing is that here you are in retail and GM, and you are holding down the forts, and there you pretty much, I mean, you've got the reins. I mean, and then later, I think 2018, you took on different reins, and the reins was to be the director of this academy. So that was a big transition, yes?
Well,
And
yeah, it was a huge transition, because no one had ever done it before. And it wasn't like I had somebody I could call up and say, hey, what in the heck do I do here? Right.
right.
And I went to John and Steve, and I'm like, what are your guys' expectations? And they're like, I don't know. Right. Because they didn't know either. And so we kind of, we started in 2018, probably in June or so. And so we knew that we wanted to do new hire orientation. We knew that was important. And so we sat down, and we basically did a big whiteboard, and we talked about all the things that we wanted to accomplish. And so that's just kind of how that worked out for us, right? It was, I think, kind of born out of necessity, but we just, we figured things out as we went along.
I think what's really interesting about who you are and what you're doing for the industry is that you're bringing training in, you're creating a roadmap for others to succeed and have a better, have a vision of where they're going in their career. You and I talked about this, and it was so important because so many don't have a roadmap.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if I take this position, then what? If I take this other position, then what? If I go into sales, then what? We are taking people from college, and as you know, and hiring them as sales associates.
Yeah.
Then what? Where's my roadmap and how can I succeed? And I think that that is more critical more than anything else today.
Yeah.
And so if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing there for your group.
Yeah. So, we, I think I told you this before, we really, hire character. That's really what we look for when we hire people.
Okay.
And because we can teach people the skills that it takes to do the job, but we can't teach character. And for us, it's really important to hire the right character. And, we try to fire people before we hire people. And when we interview people,
Oh, I love that saying.
well,
Wow.
it's
Okay.
really true, right? I mean, we really, that's what we try to do. We look for every reason to not hire the person, because we don't want to hire a person and then go, oh my gosh, we made a mistake, right? Because that's bad.
Amen.
That's bad for both people.
That's right.
And so we have great partners. We use predictive index when we hire people. And if I wasn't doing this for a living, I'd probably go work for those guys, because that tool is it's such a spectacular tool. It's literally like, I've been using it. We got hooked up with those guys in 2009.
Okay.
And
A
so
long
we've
time.
been using predictive index for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally is like working with someone for about 6 months when you learn how to read the predictive index. And it's really, I've never had a person be able to get around it, right? It's always been accurate. I've never seen it inaccurate. And so, we use that tool when we hire. We use Hireology in our system.
Yep.
And it's all interfaced with predictive index. And, we're not centralized, so we allow our stores to do their own thing. We don't mandate anything at our stores. There's very few things that we do. But we do talk about hiring and hiring practices, and don't let me mislead you. We definitely could get better at onboarding within our stores. That's one reason why we took on the responsibility of doing a one-day new hire orientation at the academy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an extremely important part of bringing people on. Whether it's a college person that we have a lot of those people. We have a lot of people that go through college. We're seeing more people recently that haven't and realize that tuition is so expensive, and we have a lot of people that are wanting to become technicians and right out of high school. And we work with a great group called Matrix Trade Institute. They're
What a great idea that is, right? For technicians. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Get them when they're ripe.
Yeah. And we talked about, we have, beside the academy, a couple lots over, we have a dealership there. It was an Alfa Romeo store that we'd purchased, and we gave back. Steve decided to give the franchise back to those guys. And so we have a building sitting there. And I had mentioned to John Malashenko, our COO, about taking that facility and turning it into a technician service advisor training facility. And I got really close to getting it done.
You didn't get that done?
I did. I was too weak. I couldn't get it done.
How in the world could you not get that done?
Yeah, I mean, I was
I don't think you're weak at all. I'm going to tell you that right now. I know how you are. You are not weak. I'll tell you. You go the extra mile and then some.
I was weak on that deal, I have to tell you.
There's no such thing as weak in you, Brian.
Well,
sorry. You know what? If you don't ask, you don't get. You just got to keep on asking.
That's right. But anyway, so we got hooked up with Matrix through all of that.
Okay.
And Matrix has done a great job for us. they have hired, right. I've had conversations with the guys at Matrix, and they kind of know my vision and kind of the things that I see. And I think it's for everybody, everyone that's listening or watching. I think that, that's where we should be looking for people, because college has become so expensive, and there's a lot of young people that really aren't sure what they want to do, and to go spend 130 grand or 150 grand or whatever it is to go to the school that you desire. I think they realize, because at that age, they're just really not sure what they want to do for the rest of their life. And I think so many people have went to college, graduated in a field, and then they end up doing something completely different. We see it all the time, and they come here for a job. And one other trend that I really like to see is that we're hiring more women technicians than you could ever imagine. But I think that's awesome, and I think that when we look at it from that perspective, I think when we can bring people in like that and take the time to help them develop, they appreciate that. And part of our mission is to attract, develop, and retain exceptional people to deliver an outstanding experience to our customer. And when we can bring people in at a young age and give them the information and help them grow as a person and really change their lifestyle, gosh, that's so valuable to people. And they love working here.
I think that is certainly the right way to go, and it certainly makes it fun. And when you can take someone from start and help them grow in a great industry, right?
Yes.
And I know for me, I've met some terrific people along the way in my career, and I will always be thankful for. And I would have never thought in a million years that I would be where I am today, or even where I've been over the years. We talked about that.
Yeah.
I never envisioned that I would even think to facilitate a workshop or be a host on a webinar or on the F&I Today show, for that much matter, or here right now. But it does take special people like yourself, and it takes mentors like yourself to help and support and to grow others, to impact their lives and create and make a big difference. And that's what people are looking for, don't you think?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. And I know I look for it. It really means a lot to me to be able to do that for people. I just know that I won't be doing this forever. And for me to be able to pass on any information or ideas that I've acquired over the years, means a lot to me, because if I can speed up someone's success rate, right, not having to spend all the years making the mistakes over and over and having to learn, by themselves. If I can
learn by mistakes.
Yeah, right. But if I can
I'm
help,
sorry, boss. I didn't realize that was
Yeah,
going to
right.
cost you thousands of dollars.
Yeah, right. Or millions.
Or millions now, right? I mean, I know I've made my mistakes along the way, and the dealer says, "Okay, don't let that ever happen again, Becky." And
Yeah,
I said, "Okay," but we hope, right, that
Yeah,
we
that's
learn
right.
before we make the mistakes. That's the whole
Yeah, that's
idea.
right. Yeah.
So I want to ask you something. We have dealers out there all over, makes and kinds. Everyone's a bit different how they do things. And I guess I don't know. I wonder why dealers don't have continuing education. They'll hire the sale, for example, we'll hire sales consultants. We'll do the day of training and have at it. See you later. Where's the training? And it's also desking. I mean, where's the training for our desk? That is just critical today, more so than ever before. And I'm just wondering who's holding these guys accountable. And then not that, just F&I. And I know that a lot of dealers rely on their insurance provider, right? Because that's where we get our products from. So we rely on our training, but not necessarily, and again, they're great training, they're great insurance providers with great training, but then there's a lot that just really aren't. So what do you say about that?
I think that, I can't say that just because of COVID that, we run into the scarcity thing with the chip shortage and nobody had cars. And, scarcity is, it's a very strong emotional driver for people. When things become scarce, people will do crazy things to get it. And,
Right.
we've experienced that in the last 3 years. And, but, it happened way back before then even. I mean, I can remember, I joke and I say, when I started in the car business, we hand wrote our car deals, the salespeople did. And my sales training wasn't sales training. They taught me one thing and it was an acronym, HWLTY. And I'm like, well, what's that? And that stood for he will lie to you. And that's what they taught me. And,
Wow.
and the rest I had to learn for myself. Hope you make it. And, but we hand wrote all of our car deals and, but I don't know. I think, I think the biggest reason, Becky, that people lack training, that they, the reason that they don't do it, I think it's, you can't measure it, right? It's like Albert Einstein had a great saying. He said, some of the things that you can measure don't count, and some of the things that you can't measure really count. And
Yeah.
training is one of those things that you can't measure. And so I think most dealers look at it as an expense, and it's just complete opposite. And so fortunately, Mr. Germain realizes how important and how valuable, training is, right? It's just, it's invaluable. It's worth its weight in gold.
So wouldn't you say that training is also about your culture, what you have, who you are, and why you do what you do?
For me personally,
Yeah.
um,
Or not?
well, I mean, for me personally, I understand the value of training, and I understand, I would rather, even average training is better than no training, right? I mean, even if I had an average person train, or even if I was average, it's better than no training.
Right.
Because I don't want people practicing on customers, right? That's the worst thing you can do. And I guess back in the day, it didn't matter because we didn't have customer surveys, right? It was just like, and
Go ahead and practice on that customer
yeah,
until
right.
they
It
tell
didn't
you,
matter,
no,
right?
get out of
Yeah,
my
they don't get,
face.
yeah, they don't get a survey. Hey, try that on them. And
We do.
so, that's not the case anymore. And even past the survey thing now with social media, right? Reviews are even so much more powerful than a CSI rating. Reviews are super powerful because everybody looks at a review. I think. I mean, most people do.
Yeah,
And
I think reviews are important. CSI is customer satisfaction. We're looking at that. We want to make sure the customer really enjoyed the overall customer experience. And I don't know. I just think that some of us are short-sighted when it comes to training. I just do. We like the idea about it, maybe, but at the end of the day, maybe it's not like you said. How do you measure it? It is an expense. it's an activity that you have to do time and time again. It's like filing.
Yeah, that's
And
right. And you
I
have to
hate
stick
filing.
with it, right? I mean, you have to stick with it. And there, there's two aspects of productivity. There's consistency and there's quality. And when you get people to do the right thing every time, you get into the consistency part. And then when you get them to do it better by training, that's when you can start to see the growth, not only in people, but your numbers. And that's really the two areas, consistency and quality that we focus on in our dealerships.
Couple things. We have a comment. I want to make sure that we've had comments throughout, and I really appreciate everyone with your comments. David Ball, because of the lack of training, the government steps in and enacts laws such as safeguards with the intent to force consistency. That's one comment that he made. And if we did the right thing every day, we wouldn't be regulated. And by the way, I think auto dealers are loosely regulated overall. Which less government oversight is best? I don't want government telling us how to do it. I think there's a lot to be said about those two statements. What would you like to say about that, Brian?
Well, I mean,
I know what I have to say, but
well, I can't disagree, right? I mean, it's true, but the problem is that there's too much loosey goosey in our industry, and you know, I mean, you can't control people. I've figured that out in my life, and I think when we have as many dealers in the country as we do, unfortunately, with the lack of morals and the things that we see inside of our store, because really what all that is short-term thinking. I always tell people you have short-term thinking, you have long-term thinking. And I always ask people, when you sign up here, I tell them this on new hire orientation, when you sign up here, I want you to think long-term thinking, right? Would you do it if you were planning on staying here for a long time? And I even go through, I have a couple scenarios that I take people through delivering an exceptional customer experience. And I get people up out of the group you see behind me, we'll get 15, 16 people in here. And we break them into groups, and I go through, and I can only tell you, getting back to you, I mean, I do my part. I try to do my part and make sure that we're doing everything that we can the right way every single time without exception. But there's a lot of dealerships that just don't. And unfortunately, we pay the price for it. It's like the kid that's always doing good, and then there's 3 kids that's really bad, and then the teacher suspends everybody, right? And we pay for it because of the 3 that's doing bad.
Right, because we do our due diligence and we do the right thing because we understand that a repetitive process or consistent process really makes a greater impact overall, because you can measure we can measure that success and what's happening.
And remember earlier when I told you, when we hire for character, right? That's a character issue. When people are doing those type of things, that's character issues. And that's why you have to really make sure when you're hiring people that you do right. It can't be, hey, if you can fog this mirror, you got a job, right? It's you got to take your time, and you have to do your due diligence. You have to try to fire them before you hire them.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It used to be, if they can last for 30 days, okay. Then they can stay. That was, when I was first hired to sell cars, you think she could last for 30 days or what? And then it's just like, oh my gosh, she did. But yeah, that thinking has to be long. It's got to be something that you want someone when you hire them that you have less turnover, and that's the idea of being able to promote that person from within, no matter where they may be, from sales to service even, or from finance to service, or sales to finance to service. I mean, in all around, not everybody belongs in that one position, but if we can figure out the right position, doesn't it make all the difference?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we, from a cultural standpoint, because that you get into culture when you start to talk about all that stuff. And, you and I talked about it earlier about bringing people up inside the dealership, right? So, and I've always told you the story about Brian Kramer and how Brian Kramer worked for me when he was 16 years old. And I didn't hire Brian, so I'm not going to take credit for that. But, I think for everybody, when you hire someone, I think that you have to look at every position in your dealership as stepping stones. And I think when you hire entry level people, you have to have the vision for that person, all the way out to a general manager, right? Is it possible? You have to ask yourself that person could eventually one day be that person. Right. And I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday, I went down and I talked to the used car manager here at the Toyota dealership quite often. And he has really great forward thinking and vision. And he sent up yesterday, I did a class on developing your mindset. And he sent one of his detailers that works in the back, and he's probably worked here maybe 6-7 years. Sorry, my lights went off. And and so he sends him up to the academy, and the guy is fantastic. He interacts with me. And I went downstairs, and he asked me, he goes, "Hey, how did Ricky do?" And I said, it's funny you say that, because I go, "Why isn't Ricky selling cars?" And he looked at me and he goes, I was thinking the same thing. He goes, "Do you think he could do it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And so I come back upstairs to the academy. Later on, I went back downstairs and I was sitting in the used car manager's office. And Ricky just happened to walk in to the sales office, and Ricky makes probably around 40 grand a year. He has 2 kids, and it's not easy. I mean, how expensive things are, and at 40 grand,
sure I do. I get it.
right? I mean,
yeah.
The guy's probably struggling if the truth was known. And he walks in and he goes, "Hey, shut the door." And he shuts the door, and he's standing there with me and the used car manager. And we basically, I start telling him, I'm like, "Hey, listen, would you be interested in possibly doubling your income, or maybe even tripling your income?" And he looks at me and he's like, "Well, how would I do that?" And I said, "Well, you selling cars." I go, I think with all my experience in the car business, next in June I'll clip 40 years. I think I have a pretty good track record of picking people out. I've not failed too many times. And I said, "I think that you would be exceptional at selling cars." And he just looks at me and he stares at me, and he goes, "Yeah, I'd be interested in that." And so, I mean, it's so inspiring. I mean, I have to tell you, because
It feels good.
Yeah, I sit there, and when you can do that with people, when you can bring people through your company, and offer that to people, I mean, you change that person's life. You could change the whole lineage of his family, right? Because, like you said, the car business is a spectacular business. I mean,
Absolutely.
It changed my life completely.
Yeah.
And my kids' life, and and my kids are they're successful because I think of the car business, right? Because it did change my life, and they had a whole different experience growing up if I wouldn't have been where I was at. And so I have a deep gratitude for the car business, and when you see things like that, where I mean, God, for me, that's worth $1 million to see that happen.
Well, here's the thing. I can say with confidence that I worked with dealers who really cared about training over the years, even during the 80s or early 90s, right? And that's saying something. But sending me to the best schools in the country. It was always, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. We're going to make the best out of you.
Yeah.
And they did. And the responsibilities was amazing. And what, like, I'm thinking that F&I people just don't know today. If I had one chargeback, I want to know how come.
Right.
We don't have our money here, Becky. Is there a reason why?
Yeah. Right.
CIT. I'm like,
Yeah.
let me make sure my log is completely straight and that my balance sheet matches what you have in the comptroller's office, right? I mean, it just had to be.
Right.
It was unthinkable that wasn't happening. And
Yeah.
so, but it really helped me to have a really very strong foundation in in the car business, from sales to F&I to GM, and later on, as I was working with director of finance for some large stores, and then of course, recruited by JM&A. That was another learning curve altogether, because I really thought by then I really knew my stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you really think you know your stuff, do you? Wait till you do this."
Right.
And you learn all sorts of stuff that you didn't realize that you didn't know, but really makes big impact, right?
Yeah.
I think that training is really critical. And I do think that, when we talk about David and his questions about, why do we do what we do? Why do we have a consistent paper trail? Why does customers have to understand the terms of the sale during um, during the sale, in F&I, and finalizing the transaction in F&I? What's it all about, and why do we have to do it? It perplexes me today, even that we're still 30 years later, still talking about this, right? And they don't understand the rules of engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think you can look at the manufacturers. I think there's a lack of accountability. I think um, I think when, I think a lot of times the manufacturers turn their head. I think they probably knew a lot of this stuff was going on. And they just, they turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
And, to David's point, I mean, eventually the government has to get involved, right? Um, in order to keep it safe for people, because, in a lot of cases it got out of hand.
Well, I think that here again, I mean, I know what it was when, we first got into F&I, and I know we made some changes along the way, but when COVID hit, I felt like we kind of, they were ramping up, and I agree, dealers were ramping up on more on that digital retailing piece and that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it was pretty much all bets off on a lot of stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we measure, we run a really tight ship.
I know you do.
But we still measure our F&I people. We still have Gil Vanover from
Yep.
Gov.3 come in and audit our deals, and right, they still know, right? Even though we trust and believe in them, they still know that, hey, they're going to check our stuff. And so I think you have to have accountability at some point. And so I think there was just a lack of accountability wherever it was. First started with the dealer, and then it went to the manufacturer, and then now the government's got to take it. But I think none of us want that, and we obviously, I think all of us want smaller government. But
Amen. I think government, right? We need to slow. Yeah, that's certainly right.
And when things like that happen, though, it's just inevitable. I mean, there's no way they're not going to get involved when so many people are being taken advantage of.
Right. And there's no one holding anyone accountable for some of the stupid stuff that they do. And then of course, I could talk a little bit about this. And I'm not, again, I've worked with some of the best car dealers in the country, and I'm always going to be blessed by having that experience. I will tell you that flat out. And I've always had a lot of fun in the car, so I'm no angel. I mean, but I do know right from wrong, right? I know right from wrong. And I know that some dealers were like, and so I go to these, I would present, NADA, NCM meetings, and I'm like, guys, don't shoot the messenger when I kind of share this information with you. I'm no Gil Vanover, but I will tell you, these are some of the things you got to watch out for. And they're like, come on, Beck. We were liking the other conversation much better.
Right.
And nobody wants to talk about it because it's like a cloud coming over, right? And we're, having to talk about the rules of engagement. And it's like, I hate to do it, but if in the event you don't protect yourself, this is what can happen. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes some dealers will say, how far over the line can I go before we've gone too far? What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, that's just an integrity issue. And I think that you can't go over the line at all. And, because when you start stretching the line, then the line gets farther away and farther away and farther away. And we just don't accept it. And we've let people go, unfortunately, that were super strong producers. But, when you make bad judgment calls, because when you're in the finance office, you've got all the trust, the credibility, the reputation of the dealership is on your shoulders. And when you violate that, for us anyways, there's not a second chance. And, we don't, it's not something we want to do. It's absolutely not what we want to do. But if you let a person slide, then the next guy's watching, and then pretty soon things get out of control. And we just don't, it's not, there's not one person that's worth more than everybody. And we just don't let that happen.
Okay. So you hold everyone's feet to the fire. It's, let me just say this. When I worked with AutoNation years back, they had the same principles as well. They held to the same principles as well.
Yeah.
There's certain, this is, when you go over that line, there's no line. Here's our line. That's it. This is it. You go over the line, there's no tolerance. And I think you call it non-negotiables.
Yes.
In your company.
We do.
Okay.
We definitely have non-negotiables. But I think the thing, everyone learns from your mistakes. And so, if something like that hasn't happened to us in quite a long time, don't get me wrong. It's not like it happens all the time, but, when things like that happen, we have to ask ourselves, was it a training issue, right? Was it something that they didn't know or we didn't teach? And I think, if we figure out that, no, it wasn't, it was a character issue, it makes it a lot easier for us to go, okay, well, then we did the right thing. But I can tell you that it's hard to collectively acquire a group of high performing people if you don't have standards and you don't have accountability. Because
Amen.
The really good people like to work where there's high accountability. It raises the game for everybody when you do that.
Yeah. It really does. And people that are, you and I talked about this, people that are talented and of high merit want to hang out with others that are like-minded.
That's right.
And, rather than a few that can get away with murder. And a lot of times dealers have to come to terms with that. So I think I saw a post on LinkedIn, maybe today or a few days ago, about, that high maintenance, whether it be that high maintenance salesperson or even F&I person who breaks every rule, but dealers don't seem to say anything or do anything because man, they're running the numbers, Becky. They're running $2,500 per car. Or my God, this guy is selling 25, 30 cars a month. We're not going to mess with this at all. That's a tough pill to swallow, right? And that's why
No,
dealers kind of
not
say,
that. Well, but I don't think it is. I think,
okay,
I would say if you make that statement, you are not engaged with what's really going on in your store. Because I'd almost guarantee you that if you look at that 25 or 30 car a month salesperson, they're probably talking to so many people to get to the 25 or 30 that you actually, by eliminating that person in that situation when they're doing things wrong, right? Because those people, most of those people tend to try to ruin everyone else's attitude on the sales floor,
amen. They
right?
do.
And even in the F&I office, that happens. And if you're really in tune with your business and you know what's really going on, it's not a hard decision. And for me, I walk into a store or I meet someone quickly. I don't know. I have a high level of discernment. Maybe it's because I've been in the business so long, and my dad was a cop, so my dad would always grill me on stuff, and I just have
I'm
this
sure it
high
has
level.
something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe. But I when I meet somebody, I don't know. I can just kind of I get a good feeling for somebody, or I get a bad one. And maybe it's a lack of eye contact. Maybe it's just their demeanor, their body language. And so I think that you have to kind of hone those skills, when you're in management and when you hire people, or if you're an owner. I think you can't make those decisions on people like that unless you're in the trenches every day watching what's going on. Because I don't think it's a hard decision when, even if it's a high performer, the numbers fool people, but you really have to pay attention.
Well, you know what? This is really cool coming from someone like yourself, who's in retail, who knows it, who understands retail inside and out, 40 years in the business. I'm going to cut this this part of the clip out, and I'm going to showcase this, because too many times dealers often have a blindfold, if you will, to these people that are, they say, star performers, leave them alone, just it's okay, we can work it out. Man, look at this guy or gal, like I said, he's running $2,500 a car, leave them alone. But they're not looking at the full picture. They see the $2,500 per car, but they don't see the CSI, they don't see the chargebacks, they don't see the CIT nightmares.
It's a mirage.
It's a mirage. Yeah.
Yes. They get off track, right? They see the mirage, and they'll go 3 miles into the desert with these people.
Yeah.
They get there, and at some point, I don't know what that point is, but they realize, oh my God, it's a mirage. And now they're even worse off than they were before, because they've even gotten farther off track. And usually those people, they lack training. They have no training inside their stores. Unfortunately, they're misled. They think that training is an expense. And
what are these people coming in that know anything anyway?
well,
that's exactly some of these attitudes, let's call it what it is. I can go into a store and they're like, well, if you were any good at what you would be that you're doing, you would be in my seat right now, but you're not. So that's why you do what you do.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of ego in our business. And
there is.
I think that if you've ever been on the other side, I think, you've experienced it. I even experienced it in my position. Because people don't like to be told what to do. And I think when you get to the general manager level or the owner level, I think that, you kind of defend your position, unfortunately. And for me, I think that's kind of where I have the edge on a lot of people, especially from a training standpoint, being a general manager at a high level at a Lexus dealership, uh,
Absolutely.
at the highest levels of customer service. It's hard for these guys to stroke me, right? It just is. It's hard for them to come in and blow the smoke, where, because I've been there and I've seen a lot of different stuff, and I've been stroked by the best of them, and so it's hard for them to get by. I just look at them and I'll say, really, seriously, and
Yeah.
and but no, I mean, I get it and I understand, but I think that it's not hard to do that.
Well,
Uh,
but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this live with you, Brian. And I know of obviously the Germain company and motor company, and I'm gosh, I think what you're doing there is terrific, and I'm hoping that others see that they can do the same, that they can implement these best practices and get into really helping, managing, impacting growth in their stores
yeah,
and seeing it from someone who's in retail, not, necessarily from someone who, and I'm not trying to take away from anyone who is, um, who's a facilitator trainer, but maybe someone that may not necessarily have been in your shoes over the years. The experience is so important to be able to share with others.
yeah, yeah. And I'm always more than willing to help people. If somebody ever calls me and needs help or has ideas or thoughts or questions about how to do it, how to start it, how to get it going. I just had a guy here today that works for the Lindsay Automotive Group.
Oh, Lindsay, yeah.
Yeah, Steve and Bert Lindsay,
Mhm.
and they have hired a guy for their trainer, um, and so he called me a few months back, and he's like, "Hey, would it ever be possible that I could come in and sit in a class and watch a class?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I even went down and I spent maybe a half hour with him at their dealership, and um, I'm always willing to try to help people and work with people, and because I didn't have that, and it sure would be nice, to have the blueprints to be able to start something. Now, maybe you take it in a different direction, but at least if you have a starting point, it really helps out a lot.
No, I think so. Lindsay's always been a good automotive group. I'm familiar with the name, even Lindsay Automotive Group in Maryland, I believe. And so